Critical thinking has been an important issue in education for many years. Benjamin Bloom took the lead in developing the goals of the educational process, including knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. Critical thinking in education has been hotly debated since the 1950s. This presentation shares some ideas to get you thinking about critical thinking. Some of the topics addressed are what it is, why we should teach it, background information, and ways it could be taught. So what is critical thinking? The definition of critical thinking has been modified over the last 2 decades. According to Paul Chance in 1986, critical thinking is, quote, the ability to analyze facts, generate and organize ideas, defend opinions, make comparisons, draw inferences, evaluate arguments, and solve problems, end quote. In 1989, Tama called it, quote, a way of reasoning that demands adequate support of one's beliefs and an unwillingness to be persuaded unless support is forthcoming, end quote. Once again, the definition changed in 1992. Innes believed, quote, reasonable, reflective thinking focused on deciding what to do or believe, end quote. Although these definitions will continue to change throughout time, there will always be a need to provide effective solutions to complex problems. In an article I read, the authors believe that when students are asked to address a purpose and come up with a solution, they truly begin to identify, analyze, and solve problems through critical thinking. So why teach critical thinking? Well, with so many technological and informational advances, living and working in the world will change dramatically in the next 100 years. People will have an ever-increasing need to obtain, understand, analyze, and share information. This will involve the skills of self-regulating and monitoring, understanding and emphasizing and evaluating situations. All of these concepts are tied together by the core of constructive thinking. In the 1980s, there was a movement to bring the explicit teaching of thinking into the classroom, which stimulated the creation of a variety of special courses, programs, and materials. Today, research shows that the transfer of these thinking skills into important academic subjects is not automatic. Therefore, critical thinking instruction is not effective when taught in isolation, so it must be integrated into part of the classroom curriculum. The challenge teachers face is how to implement these instructional objectives into developmentally appropriate activities that are integrated into lessons across the curriculum. Although it seems difficult to implement these objectives into the curriculum, often it only requires a slight shift in one's approach to the curriculum. This can be done by providing daily opportunities for students to identify the material they are working with, analyze their characteristics, and consider similarities and differences between them. Also, teachers can provide time and space for students to develop a hypothesis and then test or conduct an experiment. Here are some ways teachers can help students explore critical thinking. First, do not find solutions for students. Instead, present tasks as problems for them to solve. For example, my students in my class get frustrated when they come to the guided reading table and there is not a chair for them to sit in. It is easy for me to say, pull up another chair. However, it is better for me to respond, let's think about how we can solve this problem, and let the student come up with his or her own idea. This requires them to think critically to come up with a solution to the problem. Number 2, encourage creativity. Do not always give students teacher-prepared projects. Instead, provide a wide variety of materials, tools, and give very broad directions. For example, last week in science we were discussing inquiry skills. I presented them with the problem of dropping an egg from the top of the school building and landing on the ground without breaking. They had to consider the possibilities and limitations of the materials I provided. Following that, they had to make a plan, test it, and then come up with a solution. Number 3, always seek opportunities for brainstorming. Before reading a passage, a story, or a textbook, Have students preview and predict. Students should look at key words, pictures, and the title to help them determine what they are going to read. Then ask them to write down their predictions so they can review or modify them as they read. The International Society for Technology and Education standards for teachers that apply to this presentation are the knowledge of content and effective learning environments. As teachers understand that the workforce in our world is ever-changing and the impact it will have on the student's future, teachers can find ways to integrate technology into their lessons to help the students prepare for their future. As we should know, the workforce is going to require technological and informational advances, where students will be required to analyze and share information. With this understanding, educators can use various forms of technology to design an environment that is safe for them to work in, yet challenges students to think critically.